And hello, everybody. It is Saturday, May 29th, 1 p.m. on the West Coast of the United States. And we are up to podcast 13 on Viva Virtuoso. We welcome you all, and we hope you enjoy today's show. We have a very, very talented violinist, educator, uh, yeah, academic. She plays many roles, wears many hats, and understands music from one end of the globe to the other. And it's my pleasure to welcome to the show today Priyanka Venkatesh. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Warren. It's really a pleasure to be here. And also Nikki, thank you to you both. It's a delight.
Well, we're glad to have you here. And hi, Nikki. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing more from Priyanka. Fascinating stuff.
Yes, yes, and I think we probably want to start. I mean, we'll back up a little bit, but I think some congratulations are in order. Uh, it sounds like you've hit an academic milestone that's rather important.
Yeah, so I'm about to get my DMA, my doctorate in musical arts, from UCLA. It's kind of been a long road, and with the pandemic and all, but to finally be almost done. I had my oral exams a few days ago, and things went well. So I'm on track to getting my degree. And yeah, it's been a goal of mine for quite a while to get a doctorate in violin performance. So I'm really happy about it. And also, so many people have helped me along the way, have encouraged me, and I need to thank them as well.
So
So
today
I
we
have
call
to
you.
ask,
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry, I'm going to interject. How long has it been? How long has this road been to this, I guess, new degree? It's definitely not your first.
So this doctorate degree has been about 3.5 years. Um, yeah, with the pandemic, it's like been a little bit extra time as well. So yeah, 3.5 years. But uh, I've enjoyed so much of it. I think always when you're at the end of a degree, you feel like, oh, I just want to get it done. I mean, there's like that little extra stress. But then right after you finish, you're like, oh, I should have enjoyed it more. And I feel like I need to start savoring the end of this almost milestone, because yeah, it was a great road, and I think I've just grown as a musician and as a person so much because of doing this degree, of the research that was involved, the performing that was involved. Yeah, it was such a great time.
So today I'll call you Priyanka, but maybe next time we meet, I'll be calling you Dr. Venkatesh.
Yeah. I don't like to believe so much, or like put so much belief in titles, or but it's kind of nice, I guess.
Sure, sure. Well, for your students can call you that at least, right?
Yeah, yeah, a little extra status, I guess. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I do love teaching as well. And doing this degree has actually made me think a lot about violin technique and how things are actually executed and think about it in a logical way. And so it's improved my teaching as well.
And your particular musical story is one that um, I just find highly interesting in that uh, rather than coming up with one traditional school or one traditional genre, you've been steeped in a lot and immersed in a lot of different styles, and through that musical journey, have developed your own unique voice, and it's a little bit unusual in that you know people tend to follow conventions and become really good at one thing and dabble in another, but maybe not integrate them in the same manner that you have. And I want to explore some of that in today's podcast, but maybe it would help for background just by talking about a little bit about your musical upbringing, the kinds of sights and sounds and influences and instruments during your formative years?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Well, yeah, like you said, mine hasn't been the conventional path, I guess, as you were saying. I've kind of had to forge my own road a bit because I feel like my identity is a little bit unique. I am the child of two immigrants from India, so I have both the Indian background in me, and then also I grew up here in the U.S. So I've wanted my music to kind of reflect my identity. But that being said, so when I began playing, I didn't begin playing music until around age 6 or 7 on the piano. But my first experiences with music were actually with Carnatic music. It's South Indian classical music, and with religious hymns, with mantras. My mom would play them every morning for me, and those were my formative years in regards to music. And I think that has kind of stayed with me ever since, or even now, because when I think about what I want to express as a musician, it's not just the Western music that I've studied. It's also my Indian background, and also the Indian classical music that I've studied. So I've had to be somewhat creative, I guess. Like I said, I've not taken a conventional road. I've wanted my music to express what I am. So my doctorate especially was based in how can I artfully integrate both the Western music that I've been studying for my degrees, and also the Indian music that I've studied and my Indian background, and how can I integrate them in my music and create my identity? Because I think as an artist, you have to have something authentic to say, and people can tell when you're not really authentic, and your authenticity comes from your being, from what you are, and you have to do some soul searching, and I've had to do that. But it's been a great growing experience for me to really dig deep and ask myself, what am I? And the recital that I'm going to be doing in a little bit, the live stream, is reflective of this integrated background of my Western and Indian musical upbringing.
So when you were starting out, were you getting formal education in both tracks or in both ethnicities of music?
So like I said, I began listening to Carnatic music, South Indian classical music, for me, and so that made music for me a spiritual experience. But then as I got older, my mom got into piano, and she just knew a local piano teacher, so she put me in Western music, and then from there the ball kept rolling. The music school begins string education in 4th grade. So I started violin. And then when I heard the violin, things just kind of like clicked for me. I felt like this was my instrument. And so I started studying Western violin. But then later in middle school, I felt like I need to go back to my roots. This doesn't feel completely right. What am I trying to express with my music? So my dad helped me find a Carnatic violin teacher. So when the British were in India, Indian musicians took the violin and integrated it into Carnatic, into South Indian classical music. So that's a very big tradition in India, playing Carnatic music on the Western violin. And so I began Indian violin lessons, Carnatic violin. But then later on, when I got into college, I kind of needed to focus. I started studying a lot more science. I thought I would be a doctor, actually. My dad's a doctor. It's kind of an Indian thing. You go into more safe professions. But then in the middle of college, I woke up and Actually, my grandfather, he told me something that I never thought he would say. He said, the point of life is to manifest your creative energies onto this earth. And after I heard that, I felt like, what am I doing? I need to focus on music. That's where my creativity lies. Your creativity can lie anywhere, but for me, it was in music. And after I heard that, it was just kind of like I did a 180, and I started off on my musical path. And so, yes, I've had both education or musical upbringings in Indian and Western classical. For the past few years, I've been focusing on Western music because of my finish my degrees. But I've actually gotten a Fulbright scholarship to study music in India. So I want to resume my in-depth study of Indian classical music and then take it from there.
Fascinating, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
That's quite an honor. And
I'm
I just
so excited.
I'm just happened to notice on your wall you have some pretty interesting artwork, and looks like maybe there's Dark Side of the Moon, some other albums I recognize, and it makes me wonder, when you were a teenager, what was on your album shelf? What was on your top playlist?
Well, I have to say, this isn't my wall. I'm actually at the Apogee Studios in Santa Monica. I was doing a recording for a friend.
Well, those are some impressive albums.
They're really interesting. But in terms of what I would listen to as a kid, I mean, I loved Carnatic music. T.N. Krishnan is a great Carnatic violinist. Just all kinds of Western violinists as well. I really admire Hilary Hahn, Isaac Stern. Just so many. I also like a lot of popular music. I like Bollywood music as well. I would listen to a lot quite as a kid. I love dancing, so anything with a good beat. Great symphonic orchestras, the Berlin Philharmonic. I love LA Phil, really admire them. I also really love the tango. It's just, I don't know, I feel like I said, music for me began as a spiritual experience with my mother. She would play Carnatic hymns, Carnatic mantras on her little boom box when I was a child. But I think that you can't separate the spiritual and the sensual. They both go together. And so I think that's what really attracts me to the tango. It's such a sensual music. Actually, I have a trio Scarlet, where we play a lot of tango, music from Latin America. We're also looking to expand more and do some Indian and Western musical syntheses. So we like playing music from all over the world. I just love different cultures and different music. I love discovering different cultures through their music.
And so how much is the visual aspect and the theatrics of playing imbued in what you think a good performance is?
And what I think are good performances?
Yeah. What is the role of that the eyes play in a musical?
Yeah. It really depends for me. Sometimes I'm at a place where I think you're just the vessel for the music. You don't need to move so much. The music needs to pass through you. What the audience needs to hear is the music. But sometimes you need to use your body in order for that music to come out more effectively, to affect the audience in the way that you want them to. So hopefully you haven't choreographed a dance to go along with the music while you're playing. But when I play, I do move, but I feel like my movements are helping me to bring out the music more. Or if it's just something, if I'm feeling something emotional because of the music and my body moves in a certain way, it's just it's natural, and I'm accepting of that.
And is breathing a big part of the physiology of playing for you?
My brother, actually, he makes fun of me. He says I breathe too loudly while I play. But yeah, for me, I need to breathe while I'm playing. When I'm performing, it's as if I'm speaking, but in a more heightened sort of way. So yeah, breathing. I wouldn't say it's important. It's just something that I do. I need to do. Other people might not need to do it as much, but definitely, like when I'm making recordings in the studio, I can hear my breathing, and I'm not so bothered by it. I've heard other artists, and you can hear their breathing in the recording, and actually, I feel like it connects you with them even more. It's like a sort of
Like
just
it's more
it's
human.
a more it's more visceral experience too. You can feel them trying to bring it out. That's what you want. And that's why I love live performances too, because you can really get the viscerality of it. And that's what we want as people, to feel, to see someone open themselves and be vulnerable and expressive. That's what we long for.
And when you started your doctoral thesis, did you have it in mind what it was going to be about well before it began, or was it one of these things that you had to juggle with 10 or 15 different ideas and consult your professors and see what they thought?
I want to not. I had this idea that I wanted to write about ways that we can synthesize Indian and Western music. I did get some ideas from other people about what I could write, but I'm one to kind of, I have a certain idea, and I need to see that through. So yes, I did have an idea about what I wanted to do, and it ended up kind of not changing, but it did end up becoming more fleshed out by people on my professors on my committee who helped me expand my ideas. I kind of made it so that I also delved into the history of Indian and Western interactions, into Orientalism. Some of you might have read Said's Orientalism, is a famous book he wrote in the late 1970s. It's like a political theory about the East being a sort of stage for the West. And so I write about Orientalism and exoticism in my paper, and then how we have transitioned from exoticist practices into this idea of interculturality, where in terms of music, it's a space where two or more idioms come together in such a sophisticated way where you can no longer tell in what different culture you're in. They become their sort of own integrated thing. Um, it's like a seamless blend of different cultures. And this is kind of the ideal, but I think it's a great idea to have if you are composing or performing with different idioms of music.
And could you give our audience a concept of or a definition of what exoticism is?
Yeah, so exoticism is kind of like touching upon a foreign idiom. Maybe you haven't really studied the foreign idiom in a deep way, but you just find it a little bit spicy. So you integrate it into your music, and your audience is orally destabilized, but not enough to feel uncomfortable. So they feel like they've gone somewhere else, but they're still in a familiar musical region, adding a little bit of foreign spice, like I said. And this happened at its height in like the late 19th century, early 20th century. And this doesn't mean that you can't create great works of art with sort of exoticist practices, like the Scheherazade by Rimsky-Korsakov. There's Lalo, Symphony Espagnole for violin, which I love, but it's a little bit controversial when you think about it. It takes like a flamenco idiom, and he integrates it into the Western art music form, but in a way that's palatable to his audiences. So yeah, it's a controversial, and there's no like hard answers as to if this is a justified practice or not. But nowadays we're moving into a place where composers and performers, they're kind of brokers of many different styles, and they're really versed in different styles, and so they can fluidly move between two idioms, kind of like knowing two different languages really well. Like, I wouldn't say that Korsakov really knew Persian music or he really knew Arabic music. He kind of heard some scales maybe, and he created something spicy. But nevertheless, beautiful.
So I just want to take a back because we had a great conversation podcast. So let's include our audience. We don't want to hide anything. You actually really explained in very simple terms, but also very in depth, the contrasts and similarity and differences and all of that, and the different approaches to Indian traditional music or Indian classical music and Western classical music. So can we get a little repeat of that? Because that's some of the stuff that I found fascinating from you, because the stuff that, like you just said, the little elements, the exoticism, these are things that are so familiar to us, them as, a spice, like you said, slightly foreign. There's a little bit more there, but we don't really consider anymore. We don't usually ask any more questions, at least most of us don't. So what are those differences? What are we looking at? And if anyone were to want to get into Indian classical music more in depth, where would you recommend they start?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. Oh, so what are some of the differences between Indian and Western classical music? Maybe I'll
and differences. What do you
notice? Yeah. At risk of being sort of reductive, I can just name a few things. So Western classical music, kind of in common practice, if we see a spectrum between consonants and vowels, so consonants being more staccato-like and vowels being extremely fluid, Indian classical music is a bit more fluid. There's a lot more sliding. Like, I have my violin here. I can just briefly show. So suppose we could take an A major scale in Western music. So this is just A major. So you would play that a little bit, so it's a little bit drier. Whereas in Carnatic music, there would be more gamak or sliding. So you couldn't see my fingers, but yeah, so more sliding. And along those same lines, so the concept of a scale is foundational to Western music, whereas the concept of raga is foundational to Indian classical music. So raga is somewhat like a scale, but that's not the whole story. Raga is a tone collection. It's like that would be like its skeletal features, its skull, but in order to be fleshed out with eyes and hair and certain skin color, you need to add these slides. There are certain cadential markers, certain characteristic phrases that go into creating a certain character, a certain personality, or that go into a performer being able to bring out the raga's rasa, or its kind of emotional world. Like in Hindustani, North Indian classical music, there's a rag called Lalit, and it has a tone collection of But what really makes the rasa come out, or its emotional world, is there are two magnetic tonal centers. So there's E and A. So you have this D sharp and you have this F natural above it. So they're always kind of hovering around it. So it creates this really intensely sort of devotional raga. So it swirls around these two different centers, so it creates a certain emotional affect, a rasa. Whereas if you just played, that doesn't mean that you're playing lalit. It just means you're playing a certain collection of tones. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it actually makes sense. And this is the stuff that I was fascinating, and you just I want to know more. Not that I haven't listened to some classical Indian music before, and by the way, culturally, it's very reminiscent of parts of the Balkans where I'm. So I hear a lot of Macedonian Roma music in that, and
yeah,
I have no idea whether there's a connection there, cultural or
well, they
otherwise.
say that the Roma
but
they say that the Roma people began in India, and they moved westward. So, and their language is very similar to many Indian languages. So you could be onto something.
Yeah, well, in that case, the prudent sound. No,
Yeah,
really, you mentioned everyone, audience. I'm not a musician. I can't even read notes, but the D and F and all of that, those exact sounds that I hear and love in a bit of it in Hungarian Roma music, but there's a lot of it in specifically Macedonian Roma music, which is just also
one of my one of my good friends is Ukrainian, but she also loves Balkan music. So she's introduced me to a lot of it. I mean, I fiddled around with it. I love the rhythmic profile of it. It keeps you on your feet, and I love the dance aspect of it. I went to Greece.
Yeah, it'll get you up.
Yeah, I went to Greece a
It'll
few
get
years
you up
ago, and
out of your seat. Yeah, yeah.
I loved it. Yeah.
Priyanka, in terms of a composers, and we do have some clips here that maybe have come close to transcending that line of exoticism and really being steeped enough into a pure intersection of the two different genres. Is there an example that we have that we could maybe play for our audience?
Yeah. So I am in my live stream. I'm going to be playing all these pieces fully, but there's a little clip we have from a composer named Shirish Korde, who's composed a piece called Vak, which I feel beautifully synthesizes Indian and North Indian classical music and uses the rag that I just played, Rag Lalit. And maybe you could just play this clip. And this is the last movement. It's called the Jhala. So in North Indian classical music, there's a genre called Dhrupad, which has three different movements: the Alap, the Jor, and the Jhala. And the Jhala is the fastest movement, and it has the most fireworks, and it's the fun one.
Okay, let's give it a listen. That was wonderfully done.
Thank you, Warren. It's a great piece. Shirish Corday is extremely talented composer as well, so I'm so glad I could play it and present
So
it to you.
tell us about this live stream that you have coming up, because it sounds fascinating, and I'd sure like to route as many people as we can over there to watch you.
Yeah, so I think I've sent you guys. There's a link that I have to it. Yeah, so that's my website, but then there's also a link. I think I sent you the YouTube Live link, but it's going to be on this Sunday, June 6th. And so it's going to take you on a journey from a quintessential Western classical piece. So the Cézanne Violin Sonata Number 1 in D minor. Uh, it's a crowd pleaser. I really love it. So it's so quintessentially French. And then we move from that piece to a piece which is kind of an intermediate species, that it's a piece of music that takes Indian classical music, but it takes the raga as a scale and so transplants it onto onto Western instruments, so the violin and the piano. So it's not the most sophisticated synthesis of Indian classical music into Western music, but it is still extremely beautiful. It has a touch of exoticism in it. But then we move to this last piece. The clip that I just played is a part of that last piece, Vok, which I feel is this beautiful synthesis of Indian and Western classical music. And I'm really excited about performing for you, and I hope you guys can make it.
And we can publish that link under in our YouTube section, so people
Yeah,
can access it, and we'll make
great.
sure.
That would be. Thank you so much.
Nikki, I'm sure you have more questions. So
I have all the questions. I'm fascinated. No, really, it's you know what, you rarely get the chance. You hear some of them, you know, it catches your ear, so to speak, instead of your eye, and you want to know more. But there aren't a lot of people out there, you know, explaining this through music and sound both, and not just in a, you know, not just in you textual format. So I honestly, I don't know where to begin. So first of all, thank you for exposing us to Vok and others. We now know where to begin and where to look. But tell me this, you mentioned the pandemic. Obviously busy, you know, wrapping up a PhD, no small feat. But now that you have that PhD under your belt, you know, what are you doing next aside from the live streams and everything? Like in the long term, what do you want to do with everything that you've learned and integrated into your life and yourself so far?
Yeah, so because of doing this doctorate, I've realized that I love this exploration of Indian and Western classical music and how we can artfully synthesize them. So I want to become a part of this movement that is creating this new canon of music, which composing and performing and just putting out into the world this new kind of music, which is not Indian, it's not Western, but it's its own different thing, but it's really intelligently created, and artfully put together. And so I want to be a part of this movement. There are other artists in this field. It's kind of a new a movement coming up, but I'm just really excited to be a part of this. And I feel like it's warranted, because there is this identity, this Indian American identity, or people of the Indian diaspora who really love the music of their homeland, their country, India, which is extremely has its own extremely sophisticated music. But then we also want to integrate it with where we are now and what we're doing and other musics that we've studied. So for me, this is really exciting. But along with that, along with being a part of this movement of creating this new music, I want to also teach at universities and encourage the development of curriculum for musicians, for Western musicians, and expand the curriculum so that they're also have it also. So a part of the curriculum is to study non-Western music, and I hate using that term non-Western music.
Yeah.
So that also encouraged or forced to study music not that's not Western. So like they could pick a country, Indian, Chinese, or just a foreign music, and really study it in depth. And hopefully, it's not forced. It's something that they get to do and they've longed to do, but this didn't get a chance because the curriculum wasn't there. But I think, especially with all that's been going on in the world, with this realization that this call for more equality, it makes sense that this should come now, and that we should kind of even equalize what's being taught in schools, and in music being one of those aspects, one of the areas.
Right. So I have a question for both of you now. I'm going to put Warren on the spot a little bit too. As a non-musician, I have a question about, but somebody who loves music. What you just mentioned, this sort of learning from each other and from different cultures, and having being exposed to international artists. This seems to be an issue. The lack of exposure seems to be an issue in music to this day, and in music education. It doesn't seem to be so much of an issue, for example, for literary artists, for writers, or visual artists, or for painters, right? There you see a lot of international art being shared, and it has been shared for, I would say, a couple of centuries now at least. You see it happening with sports. Athletes share experiences and tactics and all of that, even between different sports. And you see it happening with science and all sorts of other fields. Why do you think it's been so lacking in music education so far?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have no definite answers. I just think that learning any sort of music is very, very difficult. And so once you're learning one tradition, maybe you'll get stuck in that, and it could be just a practical thing. People just don't want to expand outside of their own tradition. It could also be because in the universities, students get used to, or they get used to the fact that, oh, I've only been exposed to Western music. Maybe that's all there is. It seems that Western music is the most prestigious or formal, and Western classical music I'm talking about. So I think I should just continue down this road, and maybe I could hear other things here and there, but Western classical music seems to be the most developed and most serious. So I'll go down this road. But now we're starting to realize, and as I'm trying to explain, that there are so many musics out there that have such complexity, and so much that you can learn so much from them. And if we can get that into the schools, then these implicit biases, I think, can fall away. So it's a mix of practical reasons that you tend to just get focused on one genre of music, and it's hard enough to learn one genre, then to expand to something else. But it's also because of these sort of biases that have been built in for whatever reason. A large part, I think, because of just the way the university curriculum has been laid out. But I hope I can change that.
Yeah, I hope so too. Warren?
Just I agree with what Priyanka said, but I'll add just a couple things here. I'm actually reminded of a old song by Genesis. I know what I like, and I like what I know. Um,
Ah.
and I think we're creatures of habit, and I think that has a lot to do with it. I think also music in addition to being something that it's just hard enough to learn one genre, expertly and really understand it well. Seems to me that music is one of the things that um, maybe even more so than poetry or other types of arts, it is a little bit harder to wrap your head around um, different different genres. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe it's because of the abstract. I mean, there's completely it's about as abstract as an art can get, as an art
Yeah.
form can get. And I think that may play into it. I do think that living in a more connected world, we have fewer excuses to let that get in the way. But just by way of an example, I can relate to them without being any connoisseur of Indian classical music, other than casually hearing some music and doing a little research on Priyanka. I can tell you that I fit into that more naturally, say, than a Schoenberg 12-tone piece, and that's quote unquote Western. Maybe more on the avant-garde line,
Or,
but
or you feel
so
like you feel Indian classical music is calling you in a way?
well. I feel like I definitely can relate to it more easily than I can to, say, some forms of contemporary music, which is not to knock that, but that's an example of Western contemporary music that maybe I have an even harder time relating to.
No,
Um,
it's good that you say this, because you're saying this just points to the fact that we create these artificial sort of boundaries, these genres, just for the sake of learning them. But yeah, you can connect to some music that is not, that you maybe haven't even heard before, but then you hear it and then it feels so right to you. But then you've discovered it's named this sort of foreign music. But yeah, music has no, I mean, it sounds cliches, but music doesn't have boundaries. If you're willing to jump in and learn about it, you can integrate it into yourself.
Absolutely. Now, I have to ask you another question, because we've talked about a little bit about tonal centers and some very basic song construction or composition construction techniques for Indian music. But one thing I'm very curious about in the synthesis is um, creating new timbres. So creating unorthodox orchestration in addition to maybe the musical components, because often an overlooked part of composition is actually, under what circumstances should oboes double violins, and there's all these elements and choice elements that go into figuring out whether it's a symphony, and I'm sure whatever the corollary is in Indian classical music, of how to put the instruments together. And what I'm wondering is if you've given much thought, and what those thoughts might be, towards creating new sound textures, not only just based upon the notes and the playing technique, but the combination of instruments.
Yeah, so mixing Indian and Western instruments, is that what you mean? Or
For instance, for example.
yeah, well, actually, the piece in my live stream, one of them, in Vak, it calls for a tanpura, which is an Indian drone instrument. But I hate saying drone because that sounds so drab. It has this beautiful timbre, and it creates this like lush texture underneath the melodic line. So yeah, nowadays in this movement, uh, which is seeking to integrate and synthesize Indian and Western music, they are using uh, Indian instruments along with Western instruments, and they do create new, interesting textures. And I'm loving it. And yeah, but definitely it's an exploration. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Um, but in terms of my instrument, the violin, I'm lucky in that it's unfretted, so I can kind of go in and out of the Indian style and the Western style, because I can easily slide around the instrument, or I can play more staccato style. And so the violin, I feel, is a perfect instrument for creating these syntheses of different styles of music because of its fretless nature. But you can do it on any instrument. It just needs my only uh, 2 cents would be, you need to you can't just hear like a foreign music and say, oh, I like that, let me take that scale and kind of, you can do it, you can let me take that scale and play it and do what I want with it. I feel like you need to have spent time with that foreign music, that foreign idiom, and really made it more organically part of you before you can work with it. And it can take years, but you have to, as a composer or a performer, you should ask yourself, have I spent enough time with this foreign style before I begin to play it or perform it? It's idealistic, I know, because with Western sheet music, you could take any kind of foreign music and just like kind of put it into notes, kind of capture it into Western style notes, and then perform it, even without kind of even knowing the foreign music at all. But I feel like the ideal would be that you deeply study a certain maybe foreign music and integrate it into yourself, and then maybe present that as a part of your artistic identity. That's if you do want to create these syntheses. Some people are very at home and just playing Western classical music, which is equally valid. So I'm just talking about these kinds of synthetic artistic presentations.
So very, very good advice for all of our experimental accordion players out there. They're getting ready to do that. You know, you mentioned this Sanson, and I think we do have a clip, and that's we're kind of working our way from the end to the beginning. But if I understood right, your live stream starts with the Sanson and ends up with the piece that we heard before. Is that correct?
Yes. So it starts with Saison because it's this quintessential Western work, though it's not. I didn't randomly pick it. The title of my concert is From Je ne sais quoi to Nirvana. So we go. I see. Yeah. I see the quintessential Frenchness in music as having this je ne sais quoi. And for me, it's kind of like maybe a French way of approaching spirituality, of approaching detachment from the world. And then we move towards this nirvana, which I feel is inherent in many Indian classical pieces. And that's the Indian way of approaching the spiritual. The spiritual. So the French way is a little bit cooler, while the Indian way is a little bit more deeper and hotter, but they kind of end up at the same place of detachment. That was my whole the idea behind this concert.
Understood. So I'm going to throw that up, and if folks want a good preview of Priyanka's live streaming concert, just watch this YouTube backwards to forwards, and I think you get a better idea. But
It's not a record, Warren. They can't do that.
oh, okay. Well, there ought to be a rule.
I know, right?
Wonderful. You like flowers, don't you?
Yeah. I do.
Oh, Oh, by the way, I stalked Priyanka a little bit on social media. I mean, she put it out there, so I just took a look. There's a story behind that skirt. That skirt.
Yeah. Oh, you saw that post.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I love the
Well,
skirt,
I
by
mean,
the way.
no, it's so beautiful. I mean, I bought it in India, but I just it's made by these artisanal weavers, and they do such incredibly beautiful work. I didn't get to meet them, but it's just the idea behind that post was somebody can make you feel so beautiful and they won't even know it, but so that you can create something and you think that, oh, it's not affecting other people, I'm not making other people happier, but you actually might be, you just don't know it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
there's a timelessness to it.
yeah.
That is, yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and
And
that skirt, yeah, it was so beautiful. I was so happy to
The
have it.
music is awesome too, though. And do we want to mention the phenomenal pianist
Yes,
that
my bro
accompanies you in this piece? Yes,
he collaborates with me.
because he has to. Oh, no.
My brother, he's such a help. He's always willing to step up, and just collaborate with me. And he's such a fantastic pianist on his own. You should check him out. His name is Vijay, Vijay. He has same last name, but he's phenomenal. He's at Colburn School right now, and
oh, beautiful.
yeah, I can't sing more of his praises. He's amazing.
And there actually is another post out there that I did see, and I can attest to the fact that you can dance. I believe I saw a post where you spontaneously in a cafe or something broke out into dance with some musicians.
Yes, this could be. I do like to dance. I can't remember which post you're talking about, but
Uh,
yes, I love dancing. I think I said in the beginning, if there's anything with a good beat, I'm on that.
and the name of your trio again is?
It's called Trio Scarlet. So we do a lot of tango. I think I've sent you some clips of us playing. Uh,
Perhaps.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so we do a lot of just before the pandemic, we had made some recordings, and of course, with the pandemic, we've had to stop. But we're hoping to start again after things are starting to open up now. So we're starting to get together and practice new repertoire and play concerts. So we're excited about that.
Do you have any advice for people that have gone for a year without live playing? And oh boy, I see a
They could give advice to me too. Yeah, no, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, I've kind of put myself. I've given myself like a practice schedule, having to do a live stream and all. But yeah, but to go back and to play for people, I think it'll just take a little time. Maybe play. What I do is I play for people in my household just to kind of get that feel again. I've done these romantic musical Mondays on my social media, so I post playing of just beautiful romantic melodies every Monday. So that's kind of had to keep me in practice and keep me thinking about, oh, will people enjoy what I'm doing, and keep you in shape, so to speak. But if for other people who may have put their instrument away, that's totally fine. I've also used the pandemic as a sort of um, way of just growing my roots again. I feel like if our reach in the world is kind of our artistic output, but our roots need to be as deep as our reach goes outward. So I've been really taking this time to just kind of relax a bit and think about what I want to put out there as an artist. And so I wouldn't feel bad if you're an artist and you've taken this time to just maybe not touch your instrument. We need that too.
And before we wrap up our show, I'm wondering if you have any parting words for our audience or anything that we've missed promoting that we need to promote or that you would like to promote again?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you to all who have been who have tuned in and are listening now. I'm so appreciative. It's just really great to share my music. Along with my live stream, I have this GoFundMe campaign. I'm wanting to use the music that I'm playing in my live stream and create short cinematic films with them. So they'll be about 3 or 4 minutes long, and which will help promote cross-cultural harmony, cross-cultural communication, cross-cultural awareness with this music from around the world. And also another one of the social issues that I'm really passionate about, which is environmental protection and conservation and eco-living. So I want to create films which will present these pieces from around the world, but also show the beauty of nature. And I feel that in modern society, we've moved so far from nature. We've removed ourselves from nature, but we need to remember that we ourselves are nature. So I want these films, these short little music videos to help remind people of that, remind myself of that as well.
Well, very, very good causes you have, and it's been about an hour, and it's just flown by. We thank you so much for being our guest, Priyanka. You're always a friend of the show.
Thank you so much, Warren. Thank you, and thank you, Nikki.
And with that,
thank you for joining us.
And
yeah, Warren, we almost got through an episode with no pets.
Okay,
but guess what?
Can't allow that to happen. Scratch its ear. I think it's ear issue.
Is it she or he?
It's a he. His name is Atticus, and he's a sweetheart.
Hi,
and
Atticus.
He seems to like the show.
He's so cute.
And he seems
so cute.
Like the show, or at least this episode. Yes, he's a sweetheart.
Well,
hi, Atticus.
The show has been the cat's meow.
It has indeed. Thank you, Priyanka.
And with that, it's a wrap.
Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.